In case you missed our last episode of Life with the Polites, MRL, Marriage, Relationships, and Love, here's what you missed. This morning's topic, standing by what you believe. We sometimes have to choose the right path, and sometimes the right path is not always the most easiest one. Sometimes we truly begin to find ourselves when we have been, what I can say, broken or weak. But for many of us, in that moment, a spark ignites us, and we dig deep to find the strength to stand by what we believe. And within our relationships, within the relationships realm, sometimes we encounter some challenges, and that some of these challenges that we come abreast isn't that graceful to discuss, and oftentimes it leaves us emotionally drained. We find ourselves in difficult situations when we're trying to communicate things in which we truly feel represents our morals, our values, and our beliefs. But this morning's topic is truly special when it comes down to the matters of the heart. And again, we hear a lot about that term in relationships. That term is often used in just about every level or sequence of a relationship. But what does that truly mean? What does the matter of the heart truly means? I like to give you a perspective on that. And my perspective on the term what matters of the heart truly means is that you can't understand a person until you understand the heart. The Bible describes the heart as our inner man. It's our spirit. It's our soul. It's our mind. It's our emotions. It's our passion. It's our will. And the heart is the real you. The heart is the real me. It's where our beliefs affect our behavior. Think about that. When we talk about understanding the heart, let's truly understand that it all starts from within. It's where our beliefs affect our behavior. It's the control center of our lives. And when we stand by what we believe, it's not because there is a lack of agreement or a lack of compromise. That's not the issue. But normally it's due to resistance to accept one's belief. When we stand by what we believe, that takes an enormous amount of strength and endurance. Strength and endurance that can't be seen by the naked eye, because that power of strength and endurance are only found within us. Whereas this dissatisfaction of what we believe comes also from those who aim to try to make us someone else, someone we're not. So it's an eruption that surrounds us sometimes when we're trying to maintain levels of morals, of integrity. But when we come back and really look at the big picture, it really comes down to a couple of things. It comes down to knowing who you are. It comes down to understanding who you are, because knowing who you are is the greatest wisdom one can possess. I want you to think about that. Knowing who you are is the greatest wisdom one can possess. It's knowing your goals, what you love, your morals, your needs, your standards, what you will tolerate and what you will support. That defines who you are. The Bible tells us that he who walks in integrity and with moral character walks securely. I want us to be able to take a bigger picture of where I'm going with this, because when we're talking about the things that affect us in a relationship, when we talk about standing by what we believe, let's talk about resistance. I mentioned that a couple of seconds ago. Resistance. Let's talk about hostility. Let's talk about unwillingness. Let's talk about destruction that confronts unity and lacks grace. Again, resistance. What all comes within the table and the confounds of resistance? Hostility, unwillingness, obstruction. And my personal take on it is that it confronts the unity and it lacks grace. Because it's the resistance of people that brings upon challenges and struggles of understanding who we are. And when resistance lingers for a period of time, they struggle with understanding who we are. But in many cases, it turns into jealousy. And what happens, they actually become jealous of a struggle wrapped in strength. I need you to think about this for a moment. Keep this in mind, that sometimes people try to limit us, limit you, limit other people within a relationship. Sometimes people try to limit us precisely because they recognize your strength. They recognize our strength. They recognize individualism when it comes down to standing on what you believe. And they recognize our strength not because they don't see it, but because they see it and they don't want it to exist. There lies the enormity, I should say, of where resistance meets persistent. And when we are persistent in who we are continuing confidently believing in our beliefs. In spite of difficulties, in spite of oppositions. I said again, when we get to this format, this position of defending and standing by what we believe, many people come into the format of where resistance meets persistence. And persistence is continuation of knowing what you believe confidently in spite of the difficulties, in spite of the oppositions. Because when we display an ongoing persistence presence, and this is very important in relationships. You got what you got. I am what I am, but I'm consistent. But when we display an ongoing persistent presence of who we are, we're standing by what we believe, knowing that we're not asking anything more than what we value or what we are valued to. It's the level of confidence of knowing and standing by what you want. And I truly understand in a lot of cases, it's all about communication. But here's a really drawn in factor into that, is that, and here's a question for the Facebook audience and family. Why do some people make asking for fairness so hard? Whenever you guys get an opportunity to see this tape, and you run across this question, I would really, truly would like to hear the feedback of the marriage relationship people. Why do people make asking for fairness so hard? I'm really interested to get an outside opinion. There are many opinions that drives that question. I have my own, and which I'll share in a couple of seconds. But I think it's very important that I want to kind of get some feedback from Facebook family and friends in regards of your own personal awareness, your own personal experience. the things that you've endured in this same arena of relationship. Why do some people make asking for fairness so hard? And again, like I said, there's probably more responses to this question than anyone can imagine, but I like to share my take. And I believe one of the drivers that comes behind why so many people aren't on board with this, that it comes down to honesty. It comes down to honesty. And here's a statement that drives where I'm going with this. Honesty has power. Honesty has power few people can't handle. Let's think about what I just said. Honesty has power. Power few people can't handle. And here's my reasoning behind that statement. Here's why. Some people are selfish about being truthful. There's motives involved, and there's lacking consideration for others. Then on the other hand, there's some people who are afraid of rejection. There's the fear and the anxiety and being frightened of being hurt again. And then there's some people that aren't truthful because of their feelings of resentment, being bitter, hostile about being treated unfairly. Now, again, there are many responses to that question, but I gave my opinion and my outlook on what I think drives a lot of people that fall into those categories. But when you really, really think about it, if we don't tell the truth, the other person has no way of knowing who we are. Let's just think about it. If we're surrounded in a relationship and the other person has a problem with honesty, how are they going to be able to connect who we are, who you are, how they're impacting our lives, or what we are thinking or feeling? When it really comes along, a lot of this, sometimes fall into what people classified sometimes as difficult people that we've chosen to be in relationship with. And difficult people will try to invalidate you, make arguments or statements by telling you that your feelings, that your perceptions, that your opinions, your thoughts, or even your experiences are wrong. That's why they're difficult people. And that comes along simply because we allow certain things to capture our ear, and we surrender our willingness to stand by for what we believe. But if we believe difficult people over ourselves, we invalidate ourselves. So you have to know your truth and stand by what you believe in, regardless of what other people say or believe. We come a long way in understanding that relationships are built on two different personalities that are brought together, and we learn to learn each other. But there is a form that happens when we discover that some people just are classified as being difficult at sometimes, and that some people usually don't want to hear any truth. And that's extremely hard to defend. They don't want to understand what you're saying because they don't want to change. But that's another marriage, relationship, and love story. Many people learn to tell the truth because it's a process. It's a process for many people. Many people have to accept the truth makes them acceptable. And that's why it's a process for so many. I said earlier that sometimes the right path is not always the easiest one. Sometimes we truly begin to find ourselves when we've been broken or we're weak. And, I truly believe for many people it takes a spark. It takes a spark for us to truly understand what really is deep down inside of us, where we find that strength can only allow us to believe not just in ourselves, but in what we believe. The path, the right path for many people means deciding how the journey is going to proceed. And for some people, this may be very difficult to handle, but for others, it's knowing that power is in patience. I said for others, it's knowing that power can be found in patience. And let me explain to you what I mean by this. I believe that power is patience. Patience is not an absence of action, rather it's timing. Patience waits on the right time to act for the right principles and in the right way. There's an enormous amount of power that surrounds patience, and it's truly something that many people have to understand when we are part of a challenged or a change relationship. When we are in a change or a challenge relationship, this will require a lot of patience. And how we tie this back is that patience is a long life of spiritual practice. I want you to think about this. Patience is a long life of spiritual practice, as well as the way to find, for many people, emotional freedom. So where we are with this is truly trying to understand the value of that. Paul wrote in Galatians, "But the fruit of the Spirit, the result of his presence within us, is love, unselfishness, concern for others, joy, peace, and patience." Not the ability to wait, but how we act while we're waiting. Patience is an enormous piece of how we go along and truly understanding just how we're going to come along and get to where we're going, with the understanding that it's a process. And it's understanding that in a relationship realm, patience doesn't make you a doormat or unable to set boundaries. It's letting you feel the situation. That's what it does. It allows you to feel the situation in a larger and more caring determination to make the right action. Patience is choosing control over emotions rather than letting your emotions control you. How does that settle in with truly understanding of how we must stand by for the things in which we believe? That's understanding that patience is the companion of wisdom, and they move slowly together. And they build us a form of credibility and sense of understanding who we are and the things in which we stand for and believe. We all will understand that there are an enormous amount of challenges when it comes down to really defining and standing by what you believe. There's a course of action, there's the right course of action, and then there's the power of patience. What's your delivery? What's your cause? We all are part of a relationship that we have willingly agreed to be a part of. So now with two different strengths, two different weaknesses, we come together to try to define how we go about each other compromising and coming into a means of really wanting to steady the course. And how we steady the course is coming on the other side of having the capability and the desire of really wanting to have a successful way of standing by for what you believe. How do we go about that? How do we allow ourselves to be built back up when we're confronted and we don't allow the emotional part of us to take us down a path that can, I should say, lead to an area or a situation we haven't truly thought about? We want to be able to understand the process, and we want to be able to challenge ourselves, that knowing that we don't surrender our values or our purpose, but we communicate them. We communicate them in ways in which we can make ourselves better. And with a relationship that demands an enormous amount of work, that's a priority. Never surrender, but the compromise and the effective communications of making it better is something that we all choose to go after, to want, to desire. But in the back end, we all want to be in a position to where there is an acknowledgement of how we feel. And that acceptance is what keeps the relationship whole, that keeps the relationship healthy, that allows us to be able to communicate and withstand the struggles and the discomforts that a lot of times come along. So what are we doing in regards of trying to find a true act of wanting to be a part of a relationship that now has really placed us in a position to where we really want the success of the relationship to flourish, but we're in a position now to where we're really in a holding pattern of really wanting to make the right decision on how we're going to proceed. We all understand that there are some that will make this process extremely hard. But overall, the success of wanting to communicate and understand the principles that surround everyone's values is something that everyone that's within a relationship cherishes, because that's the water that makes the relationship grow, that makes it functional, that makes it workable, that makes it enjoyable, that you can be a sounding board to someone and be able to communicate it at different levels without pushback. We try to understand that the basis of where we're going in our relationship truly is a relationship that wants to produce healthy relationships, spiritual relationships, and relationships that will always please God. But how we get there is how we allow ourselves, to be pruned and purged of the things that will hinder that from happening. And it takes an enormous amount of work. It takes an enormous amount of work to want to be heard. It takes an enormous amount of work that want to be able to stand and believe in the things that you truly believe in. It takes an enormous amount of strength and endurance to understand that there is a way in which we are to effectively come together as one. There is a way in which our endurance, our patience, rises to the top when we become a more effective listener. I said earlier that it can be a process. It's a building process. It's many things that you put into a box that forms a relationship that grows. We should not try to find ourselves actually trying to take things out of the box that we haven't placed in the box. You put more in that you take out. That's how you're maintaining and building a foundation. And it takes an enormous amount of drive. It takes an enormous amount of work. It takes an enormous amount of wanting to do what's required in your part for the sustainability of the relationship to continue to go forward. To want to have that desire, to want to have that type of relationship, to want to have that type of bonding. By no means am I suggesting that we surrender the things in which we believe. Not at all. But part of the growth of both unions is to share those values, those traits, those characteristics, and to build upon them. I think, again, it's very important for us to grab hold of where we're going in our relationships and why. What's important. I mentioned earlier that it's all about the journey. It's all about the journey. And how we go about the journey is very crucial in relationships. There's three key points of the journey. There's growing, there's togetherness, and then there's the process. You can't take one out and still maintain embracing the journey. You can't take two out and still maintain the journey. You can't take three out and still maintain the journey. You must have all three. You must grow, you must have the togetherness, and you must endure the learning process. That's part of enabling us to go forward and really having the type of relationship, again, that pleases God and allow ourselves to really blossom and mature as individuals. We have to be able to, at sometimes, find ourselves where we are committed and devoted to where we want the journey to proceed to. And that's what everyone having their stake in regards of understanding about how we're going together make this a happy relationship, a happy partnership. It's enormous time to feel strengthened and encouraged. But none of that means nothing if you won't work at it. It won't mean anything if you're not willing on working at it. It comes to a time to where we have to be able to align ourselves together and truly come to the point to where we are in a mode of really allowing God to be the driver and communicating what will make both parties endure and enjoy each other as they go through the process. So I think one of the things that I really wanted to really take out is to really get a better feel and an understanding for a lot of people of it is hard. And sometimes, as I said before, the challenge of dealing with certain relationships is understanding what's behind the unfairness, And why is it that it's such a fight to be fair, for truth? We can table this discussion and continue to go the different matters of it, but asking one to be fair should never be a war or a battle. It should only be where we can come together and have a conversation of what's important to me and what's important to you, and let's bring that together to form the unity and the bond. It's a conversation, not a fight. I said earlier, honesty has power, and very few people can handle it. It takes a lot of knowing yourself and truly understanding why things are manifesting in your life the way it is. But everything has a means in which we can overcome the traits that allow us not to be the people that we are and who we need to become if we can impact other people's lives in a very successful manner. So our optimism is to truly stand by those characteristics in which we believe in, to promote those characteristics that we truly believe in, and to come together with a common bond, to feed off each other and to grow sharing the things in which you truly cherish. It's more than a conversation. It's a part of you being extended to someone else who's embracing it, that's cherishing it, that's loving it, and wants to take care of it. That's the opposite of what I mentioned earlier about dealing with difficult people. Again, we're not going to focus on the negative, but we're going to focus on the positive of wanting that type of commitment. Because of the base of relationship building, it takes that type of commitment to develop the type of relationship we all are looking for. How we choose to be happy with that person. The joy that comes from being around that person. To understand all the functionality that both of you bring together to be happy. Marriage, love, and relationships. Relationships, love, and marriage. However we dice it, it comes into standing and acknowledging the principles, the guidelines, and the characteristics of the ones that you love. And we have to be level-minded to embrace that. I didn't use the term selfish, all about me, but one has to be level-minded to truly understand the things in which you want in that particular type of relationship. Not surrendering it, but truly valuing it and promoting it in a means in which two people can truly cherish each other. We love the opportunity to grow and be a part of one's life. We always love the part of the emotional base that brings out truly some of the very best in us about the lessons learned and how we've become to be from this level to the other. But we also got to include the hard work and the lessons learned that's gotten us to that point. The love is in the people, not into the relationship. The love is in the people, not in the term of a relationship. You have to put the love into it that comes out from within. It's really very moving when you can see the development and the work that has went into an effort of building a relationship. That's where that term "I remember when" comes in. And when those words roll off your mouth, you automatically go back in the path, and then you race forward to where you are right now, and you see the stories, the love stories, the highs, the lows, but you come out with a heart full of satisfaction and love, because the trail that took you to got to where you are right now has really molded and helped you become a better person. And that's what a lot of marriage, relationships, and love is based on: becoming a better person and allowing that love that's within you to help make the other person just as wise and just as comfortable and loving as you are. Good morning, Lady P. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Feeling a little better.
Still tired from the 24-hour prayer yesterday.
Okay.
Still exhausted. But I was hearing as you was sharing the word this morning, and one of the things that stuck out with me was patience. I think that patience has to start even before you get into a relationship. Just having the patience that during your time of dating, that you take the time to be patient, to find out and to know if the qualities and the standards in that person is what is where your standards and qualities are. Because if in the very beginning your relationship starts out without those qualities and standards in the other person, it's going to be a whole lot of patience you're going to have with that other person. And that's because you yourself were not patient through the dating process. We tend to, as human beings, jump straight into a relationship and then pile all other circumstances on top. We immediately, find ourselves bearing children. We immediately, just jump straight into marriage, and we miss the time of the patient time of waiting and seeing first. We immediately jump into being intimate with the person. Now, we understand that things are divine will. God's going to bring it back together because he did it. But when it's permissible will, it's going to be a lot of patience. And so my take on what I heard you sharing, I'm just going to sum it kind of all up in these four things here, but quick and brief, is, like I said, is that you're patient with yourself first and patient with God, taking your time with God during the process when you are, if a male, and I'm going to start with the male, if the male feel that they are, they're one looking for a wife, because it should be the man looking, not the woman. When the woman's being prepared, everyone's being prepared, but when you're ready to get married, it should be, that the man is looking for a wife. And so he's patient enough then, as he's dating, whatever qualities he already had, whatever things that God had already showed him, revealed to him, that he's most likely looking for those qualities also, and those standards to be in the woman as well, and vice versa. Because when it's not, like I said, you find yourself being patient with a lot of things, and then what happens is that you find out that you have your standards are here, this person's standards is there, or your quality of life is here, this person's quality of life is here, or your process thinking. We're all individuals, but there are going to be some common grounds of what I'm saying. That's the way I want to say it, because I use standards and it could be common grounds. When you find that there's a lot of common grounds, it means it's an indication there's going to be less fights and less battles in your relationship, because there's a lot of common grounds. No one is perfect, but you don't want to walk into a relationship where there's no common grounds, because the common grounds is where is where your resting moments or your peace is at, as you're going through those other areas that you're going to be going through. And I think when we're talking about the other areas, the patience is going to have to kick in, because one thing about the common grounds is that when you realize, when you see that that you don't have the common grounds in certain areas, then that's where the two mature individuals have to realize that, okay, well, where she's weak, that's where I'll be strong. Where she's strong, that's where I'll be weak. Let me tell you, where she's weak, that's where I'll be strong. Or where he's strong, that's where, what I'm trying to say, just being a compliment. But even in that, it's going to take patience, because sometimes it's because you may be strong in one area and he's weak. It doesn't mean for you to batter, to blah, 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 blah. That's where your patience would kick in, and you will go to the Lord and pray about those things. And when it's opportunity to share and to have conversation, and that's a key thing, because it should be conversation. It shouldn't be a badger, it shouldn't be a force, it shouldn't be a, holding somebody hostage, because you want them to understand. No, it should be a conversation. And so when you find that someone is weak in an area, you don't do things to have them to fall. You do things that have them to be strong, to be in that area until they are strong in that area. They do see, and then you're all on common ground. So, I just think that patience starts with the individual first before getting into the relationship. Because when you're patient, when you have shown patience, when you have obtained that fruit, because as a matter of fact, that's the fourth fruit: love, joy, peace, long suffering. Some Bibles say patient. When you have that, then when you get into a relationship, with someone, that fruit is there. You get into a relationship without that fruit, a lot of relationships go sour, because you didn't come in with that fruit. Yes, you and God, love, joy, peace. I mean, everybody know how to do that. But when you learn how to be patient with yourself and the things that God is trying to do within you individually yourself, then you can take that and apply it into the relationship. So that's all I want to contribute for this morning from what I heard.
Well, you spit on an area that we spoke of earlier. Patience is a lifelong spiritual practice. It takes practice. It doesn't. It's not going to come overnight, And being part of the spiritual fruit family, it takes the ability to grow this fruit. And one of the things that surrounds the patience is the ability to wait, but it's how we act while we're waiting. And that ties right on to what you were saying. It's the development that goes along with it, even prior to, as you mentioned, of understanding exactly, what the levels are, and the desires, the characteristics, the morals, and things of that nature of having and seeing just exactly how they complement each other's on each side of the fence. I mentioned earlier that one of the things that really is challenging for a whole lot of people is that why do some people, when it comes down to asking to be fair, can be so hard? And that shouldn't be a war or a battle. That's a simple lines of communication and listening, and being able to really understand what the ask is, and on the other end, being able to be honest enough to communicate in a way in which it really helps both ends of the party. And I believe in a lot of circles that's very hard for a lot of people. Whatever the reasons may be, I truly believe a lot of people struggle with that.
Well, because people want to be right. People have egos. And if I'm unfair with what I'm getting ready to say, I'm just gonna put it this way: if it's when it comes to being fair, why is it so hard with people being fair? Because you have either the man who has an ego and don't want to be fair, or it's too hard for him to hear, or it's the woman who wants to be right and can't get fair, or it could be vice versa. It could be, and I have to say it that way because it's not too much the woman with ego. It's women want to be right, and not all the time. It's not, and I'm not saying to put women down, but I just wanted it's those two things right there: ego and wanting to be right. Or some people may say, or may just want to be someone wants. Now, if it's purely evil, then someone just wants control. Okay, someone just wants control. So you get ego, someone want to be right, and then you have someone who wants to be controlled. Whichever is true that fits, whether it's on the female side or the male side. Those are the three things that are involved with why being fair is so hard in a relationship. And why is the ego there? Why is the want to be right there? Why is the want to control there? Because people become accustomed to what they're accustomed to, and change is hard. Being fair means someone has to change. You have to consider another, and it also is selfish. There's no fairness if there's selfless. You have to be selfless in order for there to be a fairness in a relationship, and so it's just hard to let it go if and I just had to throw in that fourth one, if there's selfishness in there. So ego right, what I say, control and selfishness. Usually that's usually maybe the main ingredients to why things can't be, why things can't be done in a fair manner, and why it becomes difficult. And then if I wanted to throw in another one, another ingredient, I would say, lack of communication. Sometimes people don't even talk. So how can you even sit at the table and again, I'm gonna throw away the communication because it's the selfishness that stops people from even talking. It's egos that stop people from even wanting to sit down at the table and have a conversation. It's wanting to be right that can stop somebody from wanting to sit down at the table and have a conversation of how can we make a decision that's fair to both parties. Fear takes time. Fear is working something out. And sometimes in the hustle and the bustle of this world that we in, we don't want to take time to see the other side of someone else's view or perspective because of those key ingredients I just shared. So, give it back to you.
Well, I agree. I agree. There's a lot of substance in what you said in regards of falling in different categories on what produces exactly what you said. A lot of it comes down to really wanting to hear what an individual has to say. It's ironic you went down that path because that's the same path that I did, that I spoke of earlier. But a lot of people sometimes just aren't interested in hearing truth, and maybe that's another point of the selfishness that you spoke of briefly a minute ago. But it's it's a long way of truly building and having something responsive if there isn't teamwork involved to get it done.